We've got on our guest line Senator Jim Talent. Senator, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's always good to talk to you and get your insights on some of these world events. I also want to let you know that we've got Ferguson Mayor James Knowles sitting in with me, and he's going to ask you a couple of questions, too, if you don't mind.
Sure thing.
Good. You know, Senator, the last time that I had you on, we were talking about the Moab bomb that was dropped on the terrorist in Afghanistan, and we were kind of speculating, you know, they did this bomb to take out terrorists, of course, but was this also a signal to North Korea to show them, hey, guys need to stop being belligerent and get in line? They weren't. They kept continuing to shoot missiles, and they kind of said that they were going to shoot missiles towards Guam, and now they seem to have changed their mind. What's your view on that, sir? What caused that?
Well, what I'd like to think is that they're being deterred a little bit. In other words, that they're concerned that if they use the weapons under any circumstances, the United States will respond. Chris, this is the difficulty when rogue regimes get nuclear weapons because they're unpredictable. Their ends are hard to figure, and therefore it's hard to deter them. And this is the reason we don't want them to get nuclear weapons in the first place. It's inherently destabilizing, and you really don't have a lot of great alternatives and options when they get them. So, the lesson for the future is don't let them get. It should be a priority not to let them get the weapons in the first place.
How shocked were you? And as I said, you follow this geopolitical stuff very close. How shocked were you when China and Russia sided with us in the United Nations Security Council and voted to put additional sanctions on North Korea?
Yeah, I think it's another sign that maybe our policies are working, and maybe what we have to do is create a sense, particularly within the Chinese leadership, that this North Korean dictator, the juice is no longer worth the squeeze as far as he's concerned. In other words, increase the cost to them of continuing to support him, because I do think the Chinese are the key to either putting a leash on him or getting rid of him. And it's a sign that they're beginning to move. So if anything is hopeful about this situation, that probably is.
Where do we go now? Okay, the dictator stepped back from the red line and said, I'm going to reevaluate shooting missiles at Guam. But he didn't say he wasn't going to stop testing these long-range missiles. He didn't say he wasn't going to stop doing nuclear testing. Where do we go from here? What are the next steps?
Yeah, I would say two things. First of all, we really have to build up on a crash basis missile defense. In other words, if we can create a situation where we have a high confidence level, we can shoot down missiles, at least if it's not a mass launch like a first world power can do, the Chinese or the Russians, then you can see how that changes the calculus. In other words, the value of the missiles goes way down in the minds of these rogues if you can shoot them down anyway. So that's a potential technological answer to a strategic problem. And then the other thing is continue to do things that raise the cost, in particular the Chinese, of supporting them. So I would build up the armed forces. You and I have talked about that before, and then use the additional assets to have more forward presence in like the East China Sea, and then tell the Chinese, look, if you don't like that, then maybe you should get this guy under control. I think you have to change their incentives. But it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick, because this is a real problem when these people get nukes.
Hey, Senator, it's James Knowles. If you look back to the early 90s, I was a pretty young guy at the time, but I remember in 94, we came pretty close to war with, I guess it would have been Grandpa Kim at the time,
right.
and over their nuclear program. And what we've seen, our failure to deal with this problem over the past 23 years has now escalated to a point where not only do they have nukes, they may have been able to miniaturize them to the point where they can put them on a missile, and we know they have missile technology that can get them out here. So, I think it shows how important it is that we deal with these problems before they escalate. You mentioned an excellent point, missile defense. How do we get nations like Russia and China, who have been adamant about missile defense, how do we get them on board with allowing this, allowing us to go forward with that technology? They've been a big opponent of that. But at this point, we can't put the genie back in the bottle. North Korea's got
Right.
missiles and they've got nukes. You know, it was a failure in the 90s of the Clinton administration, but, you know, at least we've got Trump who's stood up to this dictator here. How do we get these other guys on board with missile defense?
Yeah, to be fair, it was a failure of the Clinton and then the Bush administrations, and then their successors have had to deal with it. Well, James, I don't think we ask them for permission to defend ourselves. I think we just defend ourselves. And again, we tell them, if you don't like that, okay, do something about this guy. I think one mistake we've been making is that we offer benefits both to North Korea. We've done that. The Clintons did that, and Bush did it too, as sort of sweeteners to get him not to build the program. And we offer benefits to the Chinese if they'll help us. And so they just go through the motions. They don't really change anything, and they accept the benefits. And if you look at it from their point of view, the weapons have got them something. The weapons got them additional aid. They got the United States to make offers. So you don't offer benefits anymore. You just say, look, things are going to happen that you don't like unless and until, and that's not a military attack, but unless and until you get this guy under control. And, you use sanctions, again, an increased presence, a stronger alliance with South Korea and Japan, so that after a while they say, this guy's not worth it. I mean, he's causing all these problems. And I do think the Chinese could either get him under control or remove him if they really wanted to.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and this is what, people are critical about the way Donald Trump has approached the situation. But, we've been giving him sweeteners, like you said, for the past 23 years over multiple administrations. All that has done is put the United States and our citizens closer to being in range of nuclear warheads from insane people. And that is, we have to draw the line somewhere. I mean, if we could have done it in the 90s, if we could have done it in the early 2000s, I mean, right now we've got the West Coast possibly in range. That's scary.
Right.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people that you're dealing with. From their standpoint, remember, these are not people who care about whether everybody else is frightened. They don't particularly care about whether they kill innocent people. I mean, they do it to their own people. Look at the regime that he's running, right? Look at the regime the Chinese are running. So you got to put yourself in their shoes. And these nukes have gotten them a lot. I mean, they've gotten them benefits, they've gotten them attention, prestige, influence. So they don't care if it looks to the rest of the world like it's unreasonable. Now, the Chinese have some reputational things at issue, and they do care somewhat about that. But what you have to do is put yourself in their shoes and say, what is it they want and what is it they don't want? And then you structure the incentives so that you push them in the direction you want them to go in. And if we'd done that from the beginning, if we hit them with hard sanctions as soon as we knew about this program, for example, we might have nipped it in the bud. James, you made a really good point, which is, generally speaking, the earlier you deal with the risk, the easier it is to deal with it. If you wait until after it's grown, then your options are very narrow, and that's what we've done here.
Senator, we know, and the North Koreans know, that if they ever shot a missile at us, a nuclear missile, that we would completely annihilate them. But it seems that the elephant in the room is that North Korea has, I've heard, the majority of their artillery aimed at Seoul and South Korea, and that if they ever were attacked, they would completely just try to destroy Seoul. And so I don't know how much the THAAD system could stop just a total barrage of artillery coming from North Korea.
Well, that's right, and that's why you have to build up the systems. One of the dangers when the rogues get nukes is it empowers their conventional aggression. In other words, Kim Jong-un could be sitting there thinking, I'll attack South Korea conventionally. If I win, I win. If I lose, the downside's not that great because they can't remove me because I have the nukes. And therefore, it makes the conventional aggression more likely. See, again, put yourself in their shoes and try and think the way they're thinking, and then you'll know how to respond. It's a tremendous danger. And I think the sine qua non of dealing with it is building up our defensive forces. I think if we engage in a Reagan-era buildup of the military, we would be sending a message to them that the United States is prepared to defend ourselves, and I think that would really strengthen deterrence across the board. That's the message, of course, I've been preaching in Washington for the last 10 years, and people accept it in principle, but getting them to actually do it is a difficult proposition. I like the president's defense plan, but we've got to have the money to implement it.
Senator, I had to pull out my dictionary when you said sine qua non there. I didn't. Had to,
Yeah.
But
well, I'm a lawyer. It means without which nothing. Right?
Hey.
I mean, you can't. It's not sufficient by itself. But without it, you can't achieve your end. That's what it means.
Thank you, sir. Hey, we've got
I was trying
just
to
a few.
impress you with my
learning, Chris. I was very impressed.
You know me too well.
I had my dictionary next to me because I know we were having you on, and you're going to use words I wouldn't understand. we got a few seconds left. Tell the audience what your latest National Review, where they can find that article.
Well, one should be posting in the next day or so. You go to nationalreview.com, and it's really on the violence that's occurring in the context of the protests and the mass expression of speech. And I really come down hard on the failure of local officials to swoop in and nip this violence in the bud. And that's why it's growing, and we've seen another death. I'm afraid we'll see more if we don't enforce the norm that you do not cross the line from peaceful protest into violence.
Well, that's a sad note to end the show on, sir, but it's always a pleasure to talk with you, and thank you for sharing a little bit of your time with us, Senator.
Always good, guys.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Senator.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Senator Jim Talent, always good to talk to him. Very enlightening, a very, very smart fellow. And